My name is Rahul Daswani. I am the head of people and culture at Open Government Products. We are an experimental unit at GovTech, the government technology agency of Singapore. At Open Government Products, what we're trying to do is reimagine what government can look like if we worked like a modern tech company, but on public sector problems. So that means everything from reimagining how we do technology, how we use the cloud, how we use SaaS solutions, how we do people management and performance management. So really freedom to imagine what the way in which we can get the best out of our people. Yeah, I think traditional performance management systems have a few gaps that I'm aiming to close. So the first gap is a lot of performance management systems are using a relative model. So they compare people against each other. The downside to that is often if you use a relative model combined with a quota model, where a limited number of people can exceed expectations and some people can meet expectations if you want to use those terms, then it actually doesn't promote collaboration very well because it's a win-lose model. If I win, by definition, somebody else will lose. So that's something that I want to move away from. And so in my model, what I've done is to move away from a relative model, you have to have an absolute model. So that involves describing quite well what the competencies are that you want to see in each of your types of roles, what it looks like at different levels. And then you also want to build these kind of career schemas, is what we call them, for different roles, right? So we have one for software engineer, we have one for product manager, we have one for product designer, we have one for data scientist. And so if you do that well, actually it then negates the need for relative comparisons because you're comparing everybody to an absolute model. So that's one of the gaps we're trying to close. And the second big one is, I think, if you think about who does the actual performance assessment, typically it's a manager giving their point of view specifically on the employee without a lot of data and certainly not quantifiable data around how that person is performing. So the way we want to close that gap is rely not just on the manager, but have the manager make an informed decision based on data that comes from the peers of that person. And so we get 7 to 10 people on average to provide both quantitative and qualitative feedback on each individual so that when the manager makes a decision, they can make an informed decision knowing how that person is perceived by a variety of people on a variety of work streams. So that's the gap that we're also trying to close with the model that I've implemented. Twice a year, so we run it every 6 months. In government, it's common for the cycles to be actually quite long. It takes like 2 or 3 months. I think that's not really productive or helpful because, if you imagine in 1 year, 2 or 3 months, that you lose like 2 or 3 months of working time, right? Because that can't be factored in once the cycle starts. So my cycles last, I try to have it at maximum exactly 1 month. So which means if we have it every 6 months, then there's just the last 1 month period that your work won't be factored into the existing cycle and it gets pushed to the next cycle. Well, to be honest, I think once you're starting up early stages of a startup, which we were for the first year and a half. I mean, we're only a year and a half old right now as an organization. So for the first year, it's kind of scrappy. So we actually use Google Sheets to do performance management, which is not ideal. It's okay for a small organization where there's some amount of trust, but it relies on that trust that I as the head of people and culture will anonymize everything before handing it to the manager, and you trust that I won't betray the confidence because I have the direct information, right? So I think maybe it's okay for a small organization, but as you scale, we've doubled in size since I joined a year and a half ago, from 26 people to 50 people now. And so you want to professionalize it. You want to make sure that it doesn't have to rely on that trust. And so you want a system that is able, so that I can say, hey, actually, I really don't know who said what. All I know is this is the data, and even it comes to me anonymously. So that's the first thing that I wanted to change. And the second thing is, of course, as there's more and more data, yes, I wrote a script to kind of compile the charts that I wanted, but ultimately there's a lot of manual compilation that's required, and I want to move away from that into automated compilation. It makes it scalable, both for us, but also as I'm thinking about redefining the model, not just for open government products, but for the wider Singapore government. I want to be able to say, hey, you don't have to use Google Sheets. There are other ways that are more professional, that actually it's easy for you to get up and running and started into doing this new way of working. Part of it started with a diagnosis, right? I think all good products should start with a diagnosis of what's going on, what's really the pain point, right? So I did an analysis, a diagnosis, and I asked people a survey of, for the existing, the more traditional model, what's your overall experience? How fair is this approach? What's the quality of feedback that you receive? What's the quantity of feedback that you receive? How well do you understand the decision that your manager has given you? And how much effort is it? And on almost all the dimensions, except for effort, actually the scores are not great, right? So I said, hey, we're starting from a point where there's clearly a lot of room for improvement. So given that we want to improve in those specific areas, I mean, any performance feedback, I think, should have, or any system should be able to fulfill those particular conditions, right? Should be fair. You should understand why the results are that way. You should get good quality and quantity of feedback. So if any system is not delivering on those fronts, I think it's clear that there's a lot of room for improvement. And so that's where I said, hey, there are things that are not working. Give me some qualitative feedback on how things could work better. And people ask for things like more transparency, more consistency. And so that's where many of these ideas were born, to provide, here's some transparency around what it means to be performing at the next level. Here are the competencies, here are the impact that you'll be achieving if you were at the next level. So let's talk about where you are, right? And it's a much more transparent dialogue. It's very clear what you need to do in order to be considered to be performing at the next level. And as a consequence, you see on all the dimensions with my model, all the scores have increased by an average of 15 to 20% on fairness, on quality of feedback, on quantity of feedback, on overall experience. People have agreed that this model is better. The only dimension in which it is a bit down is effort. And that's not that surprising, because I do ask people to provide more peer feedback, right? In the old model, it's just I submit to my manager and that's it. In this model, you should write 7 to 10 reasonably comprehensive diagnoses or assessments of where people are. And that takes time. But ultimately, that results in a better outcome for everybody. So it's worth that additional effort so that everybody gets a better outcome for their own performance management, and they develop much faster and much better as a consequence of having this more thorough model.